I really enjoyed this novel. It's probably the best D&D book I've ever read. Hey everyone, Eric Watson here, freelance writer, player of games, runner of words, recorder of videos, and a tabletop role-playing aficionado. With this video, I'm going to talk about Ravenloft, Heir of Strahd, an original novel written by Delilah S. Dawson and released in 2025 in hardcover by Random House. This is not a promotional or sponsored video. I literally just saw this at the bookstore like 2 months ago and picked it up. I showed it off on one of my This Week in D&D streams. It looked interesting, and I finally got around to reading it. And also, this review is going to be spoiler-free, because I don't want to tell you what's going on in this book. I really enjoyed this novel. It's probably the best D&D book I've ever read, which isn't really saying much, as I've only read like a handful, unless you count Dragonlance novels. I've read dozens of those, but those were like 20 to 25 years ago, so yeah. This is not, by the way, an adaptation of Curse of Strahd. I don't think it's spoilery to say that a large portion of this novel is set at Castle Ravenloft. I mean, you know, we've got all that up there. And folks who are familiar with that specific part of the module will recognize a lot of elements that are in this book, including encounters, secrets, characters, monsters, and events taken straight from that Castle Ravenloft section. I'm not familiar with the original Castle Ravenloft so much, but I know Curse of Strahd, obviously an adaptation of that one. So, but I did go back and actually look at my Curse of Strahd copy, and I could straight up see like the direct parallels between like the layout and the monsters and the events and things, which was really fun and exactly what I was hoping that this book would do. The novel stars, as you can tell by the cover, we always judge books by the covers after all, 5 very D&D appropriate adventures, and they all have a fantastic starting hook where they just arrive via the mists, and they don't know each other at all, and they're all, of course, very different, which is a very D&D way of starting an adventure. But they all harbor individual dark secrets that we learn about throughout the novel, which I think is a very good hook, something that Rime of the Frost Maiden kind of played around with, although they weren't all dark secrets. They were just like, hey, here is a secret. Some of them were kind of dumb and some of them were really cool. This one is specifically like, what is a dark secret that you would, that basically would, kind of like a horror movie, I guess, like, you know, how a lot of horror is personification of like, you know, shame or rage or trauma or whatever else. Like, it kind of does a similar thing like that, which I think is just a really neat hook, something that probably a lot of campaigns could use, but especially ones that are horror themed. So I really appreciate that that's in here. And I also appreciate that the characters aren't obviously very forthright with that immediately. Instead, it builds over time. And then during dramatic moments, they'll, you know, explain what that is and how it affects them. There's some really cool combos in here and some fun personalities. There's a hedonistic, sexy drow barbarian with an awesome Tressum, the winged cat, whose name, actually, you know what? I won't spoil it because it's an amazing name. There's a serious tiefling paladin who kind of becomes like the group leader. A pompous, prickly orc wizard who kind of grew on me by the end of the book, and a competent Kenku cleric, and a kind of wide-eyed human artificer. I loved all of these player characters, and the novel rotates through each of their points of view for each chapter. So unlike, I don't know, what is, like a lot of novels will, well, I guess it's like Game of Thrones, right? Game of Thrones kind of did that, where it's like, hey, each chapter is just this person's name, and that's their POV. This one will go through, I didn't realize if it was in order or not. I didn't track that, but it does go through all 5 of them fairly evenly. The first half is about what I expected, where it's kind of, you know, they have to arrive in the setting and realize what's going on, and they have a bunch of encounters, and then there's a lot that's set in the Castle Ravenloft section. But then a major thing happens about halfway through, I won't spoil it, that frankly shocked me. And then the second half goes to places that I was not at all expecting in a good way. And I don't think it's too spoilery, because on the back cover of the hardcover is a certain character that you may or may not recognize, depending on how familiar you are with the overall Ravenloft setting. I guess I forgot about this, or I didn't realize that we would be doing that in this novel, and it was really cool in a good way. Like, it was a twist and a refreshing one. I was like, okay, we're doing this. And also what they do with at least one of the characters, I was like, okay, we're doing this. Like, I was very impressed by that. All the battles are really fun and cool. It showcases various spells and abilities. We've got divine smites, we've got rages, plenty of spells. The party doesn't really have or require much in the way of cool magic items, which is kind of a weird choice. And there are plenty of horror moments. In fact, I was really impressed by how dark and bloody the novel gets, which is appropriate for Ravenloft, I guess. But I don't know, coming from a lot of just heroic fantasy, and especially what I figured D&D is, like, yes, obviously there's battles and stuff, but just how, like, just nasty and bloody it gets, and even the descriptions, like, it does not shy away from that. So if you really want to look at kind of a more, not necessarily grim dark, because it is still about heroes, but like they get damaged and they need that healing. My only major complaint and disappointment is how short the book is. It's barely 300 pages long, which is very, very tiny for a fantasy novel. I mean, it's a standalone, which is nice. There's no like overall series or anything, although I would definitely read another one by this author for sure. And I don't know if I would read another one in Ravenloft or with the group or whatever it goes on. But I mean, it's by the time we hit the climax, there's like nothing left. And then the climax is kind of fast. So it's paced more like a movie than a novel, which means it's a very quick and easy read. We get all the good stuff, but it honestly trims a bit too much of kind of the in-between moments. The most egregious example, there's towards the end, and again, I'm not spoilering, but there's like a two-page summary that just montages like a bunch of stuff happening at the end, which granted is hilariously D&D like, where it's like, all right, we're going to spend forever on the cool thing, and then we're going to montage quickly like the aftermath, basically. But as a novel, like, you can give me all that. Like, I don't know if there was like a page constraint or what's going on, but like, I wanted more. I wanted more character development, more descriptions, more locations, more characters, which I guess is a good complaint to have because I really enjoy the novel. And it's very rare as I get older that I want novels to be longer. Usually I find them too long and I'm like, all right, what, especially fantasy novels, right? And I'm like, all right, come on, this is ridiculous now. But this is the opposite. I thought that this one would be great if it were like another, honestly, like 50 pages long. And it wouldn't even have to add any new like monsters or battles or anything, but just give me those other moments. Give me the character developments and give me the descriptions and all of that. Maybe introduce another quest or two. But that's really my only complaint, is I was just astonished by how, like, oh, we're done. I'm over. Overall, I heartily recommend this novel to literally anyone who enjoys action-packed fantasy novels, particularly with a horror bent. Kind of reminds me almost like the Underworld series of very, like, you know, action horror kind of a thing. And I can't recommend this enough. It's absolutely fantastic. I was not familiar with the author before this. I believe she's written a lot of other stuff, including like some Star Wars novels. I would definitely want to check that out because I was an instant fan. And yeah, I think this is just a very impressive, even if you're not wholly familiar with the Strahd, Ravenloft stuff, or you're not wholly familiar with Dungeons & Dragons, but that probably does help. I think you're going to really enjoy Ravenloft, Heir of Strahd. So thank you for watching this review. If you like this video and want to check out more D&D content, including live plays, it's all right here on my channel. If you want to support my work, you can check out patreon.com/RogueWatson. Shoutouts to my patrons, Platinum patrons, Joe, Will, Thomas, Brandon, Genocide, Roleplay Roll, Christopher, Big Nut, John, Nathan, Andrew, Stephanie, Jason, Love You, Spuds, Borden, Unimona, LLC, Tom, The Eating the Dogs, Marcus, Snuggy, Hugo, Jerry, Say, Shasha, and John. And gold patrons, RPG Papercrafts, Pretty Boy, and Yuma, The Lizard Lounge, Jerome, Nathan, Scott, Rufus, Jerry, Glenn, and Mark. Thank you all very much for your support.